In an industry full of media that has been incredibly bland and desaturated, a world where most popular series are only built off the action without much of a good story, memorable characters, or actually much thought put into the series. And this hasn't only happened in manga, it's happened across the board. But within this, one madman did something truly different with his masterpiece titled Chainsaw Man. And you might hear the name and the premise and think that the series is just going to do what every other series is doing right now, and being not much story, just action. The story only really exists to get to the action, and it's pretty much just made to be an anime because, to be honest, action is a lot better when animated. But no, Chainsaw Man was not that. While most shonen series had a main character that was kind of just a perfect, Gary Stu, and is outshined by the side characters, Chainsaw Man has one of the best main characters in all of manga, with crafting a character that seems shallow on the outside, but when you actually look deep into him, he has a lot of depth. While most shonen manga hype up a big bad powerful villain only for the battle to be with them to be mostly uninteresting and emotionless and without major consequences, Chainsaw Man takes that trope and makes the final battle with that villain one of the most tragic, raw, and just kind of like fucked up fights in the manga. This manga is just so different, and it's just so incredibly written. It's easily a top 5 of all time for me, and this video will be the start to a series of small videos where I'll be going through the entire manga and giving this series the analysis it deserves, starting with the introduction arc, which is only about 4 chapters. This arc mostly works at introducing us to all the characters and their personalities and a bit of their motivations, but the series starts with Denji, who is in an awful amount of debt, with him having sold multiple body parts, and works as a devil hunter with his pet slash devil slash dog, and he is still in about $260 USD in debt, but his job as a devil hunter gets him enough to pay the Yakuza every week. And I actually really like how the devils in this series work, because instead of doing it like Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer, where they're just kind of random fodder with the random abilities, and yes, I know Jujutsu Kaisen is curses, not devils, but in Chainsaw Man, how they work is they're all like fears, and the more that fear is held by more people, the more powerful the devils are. It's all around like a pretty cool power system, and it leads to kind of infinite possibilities in the different devils we see that could be in the series. Like the Tomato Devil, which we see Denji kill in the second page. But even with Denji's situation, he still has dreams, but most of them are just like stuff like eating toast with jam, but they're still dreams nonetheless, and this does add a relatable aspect to his situation, because, well, not many people are in his situation as dire as Denji. I think everybody can still relate to wanting more out of life, but just believing it will never be possible, like Denji seems to think in this scene. And we also learn about the unfortunate reasoning for Denji's debt, which is that his dad owed a massive debt to the Yakuza, but took the easy way out, leaving Denji as a very young kid with an insane amount of debt. It was here that he was at his lowest, and he found an injured Pochita who he fed his blood, which heals devils, and this was the start to their partnership. As since Denji saved Pochita, I don't know how to pronounce it, helped Denji get more money through devil hunting. This flashback works at 2 things. The first one is showing the beginnings of the relationship between Denji and Pochita, which does kind of give you a stronger understanding of their bond, as we learned that both of them saved each other. But it also shows how life was never normal for Denji, as ever since the age of, he looks like 4 to 6 here, he's had that debt that made it so he barely has lived any life, and he's living in a shack eating a piece of bread for food for the day, which we learn when we go back to the present and see Denji cuddling Pochita after eating a slice of bread for the day, talking about his dreams of doing pretty normal things like, eating toast with jam, hugging a girl, which may not be that normal, but he gets a knock at his door, and it's the Yakuza member he pays the debt to, wanting him to go kill a devil for him, with him saying that he wished they'd at least let him dream. I think that this is a pretty obvious metaphor for them not letting him live a normal life, as his dream is to live a normal life. So I wish they'd at least let me dream kind of turns into at least let me live a normal life, which is something that pops up multiple times, where Denji says something that sounds kind of silly, but what it really means is something kind of more tragic. And that is because he is somebody with absolutely zero social skills that leads to him expressing what he wants in very abnormal ways, and we'll get more into those types of scenes later on. But it's here that the Yakuza member turns out to be a two-faced bitch, because he turns on Denji and lures him here to kill him as they cut a deal with the zombie devil, or as we learn, a contract. Contract is basically where a devil and human make a contract. I don't know why I should explain that. And the Yakuza member's contract was the zombie devil wants the deaths of all devil hunters, and the Yakuza member wants the power of the zombie devil. And it's not really explained more than that, but Denji is disposed of in a dumpster, and it's here that we see a flashback where Denji tells Pochita to take over his body if he dies, which would make Denji the Chainsaw Devil Fiend, which is where a devil takes over a human body and becomes the new host. And that actually isn't what happens here with Denji, because he kind of merges with Pochita and becomes the Chainsaw Devil hybrid, where he can transform the Chainsaw Devil. But even when he is in that form, he's still Denji. And all around, it's a pretty good scene. And before merging with Denji, Pochita tells him a few last words, where he tells him that he loved hearing him talk about his dream, and that they have now entered a contract where in exchange for Pochita's heart, he has to show him his dreams. So it's not like Pochita is entirely dead, it's just he's not able to talk to Denji anymore, and he can't see him anymore, but still he can see through Denji what's happening, and it's not really explained all that much. So that's really my explanation of it. But we first see Chainsaw Man's carnage when he just starts ripping up the zombie devil and eventually kills it, and the Yakuza man getting rid of all of his debt, and his new life sort of begins in a way at the end of the chapter here, where we first meet Makima, and she goes straight for manipulating him when she gives him a hug and takes him in. And just to talk about Makima a bit, she is one of, if not the best written villain I've seen it in a long time. She's just so conniving, and yet she has a human aspect that makes you think that she's not, but towards the end everything comes to a head pretty perfectly. I'd also like to add how she can instantly seem to recognize the smell of Chainsaw Man, which is pretty good foreshadowing for what's to come. But starting chapter 2, where Denji is in paradise with him, taking a major liking to Makima, and honestly I don't know what everybody is on about with Makima when there are characters that I definitely consider a lot more attractive throughout the series. But Denji is also finally able to eat, and he's like this all the way up until he is threatened with death, not wanting to kill a devil at the moment. And this is a kind of looked over moment in my opinion, and they did take this out of the anime, but Denji here is given a chance to run away and actually be free, as he is having second thoughts about everything, as well he can eat good food now, and he has housing. He is kind of in the same situation as he was before, having to kill devils to not be killed by somebody else. But after defeating the devil, all of his thoughts are like immediately erased after getting back to Makima. And this is kind of one of my biggest problems with the story, is this idea is completely scrapped after this, as Denji never really questions this again. All the reasons he ends up fighting Makima later on are for different reasons than this. I just kind of wish that things were a bit different, and it just feels like it was like a waste of a plot point. But on the other hand, it does make sense why Denji wouldn't think this anymore, because he does have a better life here with the food and housing and friends a bit later. I just think it would have been better for the story to just have never brought this up and have just let it stay, as now it implanted that thought into your head, and it's shown to be implanted in Denji's too, but it's never really brought up again. Anyway, Makima continues to charm Denji. By charm I mean manipulate, even making him act like a dog for her, which actually ends up being way darker than Denji being horny later on. As again, Makima has some pretty sinister plans for Denji, and again we'll get to that in the Control Devil arc. But Makima ends up assigning Denji to Aki Hayakawa, who seems to be just that kind of stoic master character that's in every modern shonen. But like I was saying at the start, this manga takes that trope and turns it into one of, if not the most tragic character in the story, with him having one of the best character arcs and a lot of like really good backstory to show how he got here and how he learned to get out of it. Just in general, Aki is easily a top 3 character in this manga. He's amazing, and out of all characters, his ending is by far the most emotional. Like I said, we'll get to that. But at the moment, he is kind of that stoic, mysterious character that's in a lot of animes, with him beating up Denji, telling him he should, because he doesn't have the correct motivations, to which Denji kicks him in the balls over and over and over again. Like Denji basically give this guy a free vasectomy. But what I will say is that this does show Denji's conviction, and is the first time we see him actually stand up for himself, because in all honesty, when Denji isn't around Makima, he isn't a bitch, as he does take what he wants, and that's not to say he's selfish, because he does do things for the people he cares about, but when he wants something, he does try his hardest to get it. But after hearing about how well they get along, Makima decides to put Denji and Aki on the same squad and have them live together, which basically means they're together like 24/7, which is something that Aki is not very pleased by. And we see how Denji really doesn't know how to handle an actual living space, because this is not the shack he used to live at, with him making huge messes and just kind of being obnoxious to Aki, who is having a tough time with living with Denji. And the next day, Denji is sent out with Aki to kill a devil, and Aki shows how little he cares for them when Denji says he purposely gave the devil a good death, and Aki gets mad and beats Denji over the head with how horrible and evil they are, only for it to be revealed that Denji only did that for these dirty magazines that were in there to not get dirty. And Denji also sets new goals, which is basically to be a freak and touch titties. But that is the end of this introduction arc. Like I said, I want to make these smaller videos just to so I don't get bored of making one big video. I'm probably going to compile these all into one afterwards. But it's a pretty good arc to open up with. It sets a lot of the future things we see in the series, like Makima's manipulation, Denji's goal, and in general sets a tone for the series as a whole. Make sure to tune in next video where we'll cover the Bat Devil arc, and I'll see you next time.